Lieutenant Cousins. Ah, Lieutenant Cousins was a guy that was possibly somehow in my chain of command at the 307th Engineer Battalion. I don't know where he was around me. I don't remember. He wasn't somebody I dealt with regularly, so I don't think he was in my direct chain of command. Although I respected him and would give him my respect as an officer, a commissioned officer of the United States, even though he's just a lieutenant. Imagine what it takes to become a 4-star general. Generally, that takes some great brand of respect. People don't think that much anymore that way. Lieutenant Cousins had a wife that as a young soldier, at least until the age of 20, I was attracted to. Lieutenant Cousins' wife was Captain Cousins. She worked up in division headquarters somewhere there. I was out of division headquarters. I would see her every once in a while, and we had, I think, we hadn't met through her husband. I had just seen her and had interactions with her up at division headquarters before I knew who she was. Captain Cousins. I was very attracted to her. But then it turned out, I found out that was Lieutenant Cousins' wife. It's like, oh boy, there could be trouble. I was an innocent. I was a good boy. I was a bad soldier, but I was still a good boy. I was actually a very good soldier. Just they didn't like my attitude. I was laughing all the time. So they're Captain Cousins. I think the one time for sure, yeah. They were having the 82nd Airborne Division Association convention in Louisville, Kentucky, one year, and that was a 4-day weekend. If you volunteered to jump in, you got a 4-day weekend and got to hang out at the 82nd Airborne Division convention as a young man with all the World War II vets saying, and the one guy's the bartender, and I walk up, I'm like, he says, if you're in the 82nd, you're old enough to drink. And I said, there. I was only like 18, 19 years old at the time, but soldiers know soldiers. Soldiers don't want to get in the way of their fucking buddies' drink. And so we actually jumped in to the Louisville airport. They gave us elbow pads and shin pads. They'd never given us anything like that, but we were jumping onto a fucking runway, an airport. And we came flying in at the beginning of the weekend, 1,000, 2,000, it's supposed to go on 2. You count to 4 and then pull your reserve. But sometimes you don't want to because you're like, it's still going to open. And it does. But yeah, we jumped onto the airport in Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville. I went to basic at Knox as a show of power, I guess, for the guys. Yeah. And it was great talking to the old, oh, Jesus. to the old World War II vets because they were still pretty spry back then, even though they were like 70. But yeah, I didn't land on the runway. I steered my parachute to land in the grass between the tarmac, the runways. Um, Nobody ever really understands. Just make it easy on yourself. Nice soft landing. So we go in there, and I was looking for my my cunt cap. You say, what do you call it that? There. This is my VFW cunt cap. They call it that for that. But on my military one, my army one, it's got the little, what do you call it? The glider patch. You'll see it in Band of Brothers. I'm Lieutenant Captain and Major Winters. But I got to talk to one of the guys that was in the gliders, and he was talking about how the other gliders, they see a glider is like you don't see them too much anymore, but it's an airplane without an engine that gets drawn up behind another airplane, and they cut the line, and they can go a long ways like an airplane without any goddamn engine, and they land and they get out and they fight. But the one guy I was talking to, he was talking about how the gliders around them when they're coming in for D-Day, they were getting shot down around them, and there were bullets coming up and killing people on his and stuff like that. You get to meet some real fucking people. I doubt they voted for that poor guy if they were still alive. And so I got loaded in there. We were building a pyramid with cans and shit, All of us young guys drinking with the old dudes. And there was a bus that would take us back to the high school they were keeping us in. There's a whole nother story about that with the cheerleaders, but I'm not going to get into it right now. Nothing happened. So I was going out to catch the bus on the way out, and I run into, there's Lieutenant Cousins there. And I'm like, Lieutenant Cousins. I decided to talk to him because he's with his wife, Captain Cousins. I was like, oh, I was all drunk coming out. I'm like, oh, Lieutenant Cousins. And so I go up, all the way, sir. Yeah. And then I'm talking to him and his wife and looking at his wife. And I know she was looking at me. She's been wondering about me for some time. And I look over, and the reason I used to come up there was because they were with an old man, and I just was like, want to introduce myself to the old man. And he just this old man, and I looked at him, and I said, hey, how the hell are you? And I grabbed his hand, and I started shaking it. And because I've been talking to so many old men all night long, it was customary. The guy's shaking his hand. He says, oh, well, actually, I'm a Lieutenant General, Brigadier General Johnson. No, that's not how it started. I got it. I went to talk to them, and I looked at him. I said, hey. And I started shaking his hand. How the hell are you? And I looked at him, and I'm shaking his hand. I got a firm grip on this old man. I'm not trying to hurt him, just a good handshake. The kind that lasts longer than it should because you're fucking having some sort of recognition. And I said, I know you. I said, you're General Johnson. I said, and he says, you seem to know me, but who are you, son? And Lieutenant Cousins standing right next to him, next to Captain Cousins, his wife. Lieutenant Cousins looks at me, he says, "Don't tell him, Elder Quist. Don't tell him, Quist." He just put the last of my name on it so he wouldn't know my whole name, because people called me Quist when I was in the Army. It just makes it easy. He says, "Don't tell him, Quist." And I looked and I said, "I don't think I should tell you that, but I gotta go now." And I let go of his hand and got the fuck out of there. And I woke up in the high school on a cot. But see, he was a brigadier general at that time, and he went on to become a major general and became the guy that was our division commander when we went to Iraq. He wouldn't let us bring back spoils of war like bayonets and shit that we picked up off the ground. Some guy tried to get an arm through customs, but he put a rule out there that you couldn't do that. They wouldn't even let me bring my landmine. I had a little toe popper thing that I'd found that was supposedly, but whatever, they said it was active. It was a live fucking mine when they called me in, because I put it out there to them. I said, "I got this." And they called me over the fucking speakers, said, "As specialist, Elder Quist, please come to," and they had like special forces dudes, or I don't know, smart people up there that were running the customs thing. And they told, so the thing is, so there's that time with Captain Cousins. I'm telling you, I would run into her all the fucking time. It was almost like it was like, not testing me, testing her. I know I was a good kid, but I know no woman belongs to any man. They make their own decisions when it all comes out to the end of it all. So there was that time I had a serious like, and I know she's going, "Who's that fucking kid?" And then there was a 10K run I ran in sometime before we went to Desert Storm Shield, to whatever the fuck. I would run in 10Ks because, come on, look at me. I was a soldier. If you watch the movie Gallipoli, where that one kid that wants to be like low, whatever the hell, LaSalle, the great Australian runner, he wants to be the next LaSalle, and then he ends up joining the military during World War One, and is in Gallipoli, and he was a runner. He was the fastest runner in the fucking place. I was that. And so I would just run 10Ks. And I hated it in the middle of it, but by the time it was done, I was like, my times always got better. And I'm like, when is the next one? I was ready. As much as I hated it all the way through, I'd get to the end and it just was like, And so this 110K I was in, and I never got right up to the front. Everybody gets up the front, they want to win, but really they're just getting in the way of the people that are faster than them and patient. And so I would end up passing most of those people. I never won. I was never somebody that trained for this stuff. It's just something I liked to do, and I was good at it. And so I went on this 10K, and I'm running, and I'm running, and along the way, somewhere about half of it or something, I'm coming running. I'm looking at this woman in front of me. I'm like, "Look at that." And I recognized her. And I went by, and it was Captain Cousins. She was running in that damn thing. And here comes this kid. And I looked at her on the way by. We looked at each other. And I said, "All the way, ma'am." And she says, "Airborne." And I kept running. And I just, I don't know, that one I think was a 37-minute 10K. I think the best I ever did. And now that I think of it, I I didn't say all the way. I couldn't remember, but I ran by her and I said, "Good morning, ma'am," because it was a nice morning for a run. And she said, "Good morning," and I kept going. So there at the end of it, I decided to stick around. I don't usually do this. I finish. I say, "When is?" So I say, "When is the next run?" And I don't usually do this, but I stuck around to see who the winners were. And the winner of the women's group in the 82nd Airborne Division 10K thing that they were doing was Captain Cousins. And I was like, she's a winner. I'd been drinking my Gatorade and waiting to see her come in. And, well, what it comes down to, I suppose, is that Brigadier General Johnson that I ran into with Lieutenant Cousins and his wife, Captain Cousins, at the 82nd Airborne Division Association convention that I jumped into, the guy that got his second star, a 2-star, looked like he's on the way to the top. I always thought he was a prick. Ending up being our division commander in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. From a story I heard, when we got back, he was expecting to get his 3rd star, and he had a whole party. He was going to become a lieutenant general, like Colonel Strock, who was my battalion commander, became lieutenant general and ran the Army Corps of Engineers. This guy, he was expecting to get his 3rd star, and he had a party, and all these people were there all excited waiting to hear the news. And the news came in, he was denied his 3rd star. So you see, sometimes the military, as much as you don't want to believe it, gets things right. They don't just hand stars to suck asses and jerk offs. They don't allow someone to become a four. They didn't, still haven't allowed somebody to become a 4-star general that does not have the respect, the honor, the ability to be a 4-star general. And now they're putting 3-star generals in charge of things up in the Pentagon. That's got to be an indicator that things aren't going so well for us anymore.